The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that crept across the worn wooden floorboards of Samuel's modest home. The faint aroma of simmering collard greens wafted through the air, mingling with the dust motes dancing in the golden light. He stood in the kitchen, stirring the pot absent-mindedly, his mind a whirlpool of memories and unfulfilled dreams. At 62, Samuel was a man of quiet strength, but today, that strength felt like a fragile facade. The door creaked open, and in walked his son, Marcus, a tall figure with the swagger of youth but the weight of the world etched into his features. Samuel had always been proud of Marcus, a child with a spark of brilliance that seemed to promise a bright future. But that promise had dimmed over the years, overshadowed by poor choices and a series of bad breaks. Samuel had always been there to catch him when he stumbled, but today, as Marcus stepped inside, a familiar sense of dread settled in Samuel's chest. "Hey, Dad," Marcus said, his voice casual, too casual. Samuel turned, wanting to see his son's face, but feeling that something was off, the air thick with unspoken tension. "You busy?" "Just making dinner," Samuel replied, forcing a smile. "You hungry?" "Starving," Marcus said, but his eyes flickered around the room, landing on a framed photograph of Samuel and his late wife, Mary. The smile in that picture felt like a ghost haunting the corners of their home, an echo of a time when laughter filled the space, and love was a tangible thing. "Listen, Dad," Marcus said, his voice lowering, a nervous edge creeping in. "I need to talk to you about something important." The moment stretched, a taut string ready to snap. Samuel's heart raced, sensing the storm brewing beneath his son's surface. "What is it, son?" Marcus shifted his weight, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, the very picture of a man caught between desperation and pride. I got myself into a bit of trouble," he confessed, the words tumbling out like stones dropped into a deep well. "I owe some money. A lot of money." Samuel's stomach dropped. The world narrowed down to that single moment, the weight of Marcus's words crashing over him like a tidal wave. "How much?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. 20,000, Marcus said, and the air turned electric with the weight of the revelation. "I didn't mean to let it get this far, Dad. I thought I could handle it." 20,000? Samuel repeated, the number echoing in his mind like a death knell. His thoughts raced to the modest savings he had managed to scrape together over the years, money earmarked for his retirement, for the modest home he had built with his own hands, for the life he had envisioned after the burdens of fatherhood had eased. "And who do you owe?" "Just some guys," Marcus said, averting his gaze, shame coloring his cheeks. "They don't play nice, Dad."
"I'm scared."
Samuel clenched his fists, a mixture of anger and heartbreak swelling within him. This was not the first time Marcus had found himself in trouble. It was a cycle that felt all too familiar, a spiraling descent into darkness that Samuel had watched unfold helplessly. "You need to tell me everything, Marcus. You can't keep hiding things from me." Marcus sighed, the weight of his decisions pressing down like an anchor. "They're not just guys, Dad. They're involved in things I can't even explain. I thought I could make some quick cash, but it escalated. I didn't want to involve you, but now you want me to help you," Samuel interrupted, his voice sharper than intended. "You want me to dig you out of this mess? Please, Dad, I don't know what else to do. If I don't pay them, they'll hurt me." The desperation in Marcus's voice twisted something deep within Samuel. He had sacrificed so much for his son, pouring years of love and effort into him, only to watch that love unravel into reckless choices. "How did it come to this?" Samuel asked, his heart heavy with disappointment. "I thought I could make things better. I thought I was being smart," Marcus replied, his voice breaking. "But now I'm just scared. I don't want to end up in a place I can't get out of. Please, Dad." Samuel felt the familiar tug of familial loyalty, the instinct to protect his child even when he had strayed so far off course. "You know I'd do anything for you," he said, his voice softening. "But I can't just hand you $20,000. You need to face this, to own up to what you've done." Marcus's face hardened, and for a brief moment, Samuel saw a flicker of something darker behind his son's eyes. "You think I want this? You think I wanted to be in debt to those people? I didn't choose this, Dad. I'm trying to survive here." The tension snapped, leaving an echoing silence in its wake. Samuel's heart raced, and he felt a mix of anger and sorrow. "You're not a child anymore, Marcus. You need to take responsibility for your actions." "I know that," Marcus snapped back, frustration boiling over. "But it's easy for you to say that from your cozy little life. You don't know what it's like to be me." The accusation stung, cutting deeper than Samuel cared to admit. The truth was, he had worked hard his entire life to build a stable existence, to provide a foundation for his son. Yet here they were, standing in the wreckage of what had once been a close bond, now splintered by secrets and desperation. "Maybe you're right," Samuel said quietly, the fight draining from him. "Maybe I'm not the one who understands. But I do know that running away from your problems won't solve anything. You need to face this head-on." Marcus looked away, the fight in him ebbing as the weight of reality settled in. "I don't know if I can," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper.
I'm scared, Dad.
In that moment, Samuel felt the cold grip of helplessness wrap around his heart. The man before him was not the son he had nurtured. He was a stranger, a hollow shell driven by fear and greed. Samuel's instincts screamed at him to protect, to shield his son from the consequences of his actions. But at what cost? And then, like a dark cloud passing overhead, the realization hit him. If he didn't intervene, if he didn't take action, he could lose Marcus entirely. The thought gnawed at him, an insatiable hunger that threatened to consume everything he had built. "I'll help you," Samuel said, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. "But you need to promise me that you'll get help. We can figure this out together." Marcus's eyes widened, hope flickering back to life. "You mean it?" "Yes," Samuel replied. But beneath the surface, a deeper, more complex plan began to take shape in his mind. He had resources, connections, and a quiet resolve that had been honed over decades. If he was going to save his son, he needed to play a game he never wanted to be a part of. As Marcus relaxed, relief washing over his face, Samuel's heart hardened with a cold determination. The battle was just beginning, and he would not allow himself to be a victim of his son's choices. The stakes were too high, and he knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But as he stood there, watching Marcus bask in the light of his father's reluctant support, Samuel felt a flicker of something else, an ember of resolve igniting within him. He would protect his son, but it would be on his own terms. The game had changed, and Samuel was ready to play. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting a warm orange hue across the modest kitchen, Samuel leaned heavily against the counter, the weight of his decision settling in his bones like a heavy stone. The faint sound of sizzling from the skillet filled the air, mingling with the scent of garlic and onions. Comforting, yet bittersweet. He stirred the mixture absently, his mind racing with thoughts of Marcus and the precarious path ahead. Marcus had left the room in a huff, the door slamming behind him like a thunderclap. Samuel could still hear the echo of his son's frustration resonating in the walls, a reminder of the tempestuous relationship they had navigated through the years. Each argument seemed to carve deeper grooves into the fabric of their lives. Yet somehow, Samuel always found a way to patch things up. After all, family was everything. He turned his gaze toward the worn photograph that hung crookedly on the wall, a snapshot of a younger Marcus, grinning widely at the camera, a trophy held high above his head from a school soccer match. In that moment, he was just a boy, unburdened by the weight of adulthood. Samuel's chest tightened, a familiar pang of regret washing over him. Had he done enough to prepare Marcus for the world? Or had he sheltered him too much, leaving him unprepared for the harsh realities of life? With a resigned sigh, Samuel switched off the burner and plated the food, the steam rising in delicate tendrils. He set the table for two, the clinking of dishes resonating in the otherwise quiet room. He couldn't help but feel an impending sense of dread about the conversation that lay ahead. Would Marcus understand? Would he accept the help? Or would pride lead him to push Samuel away once more? Just as he was about to sit down, a quick knock on the door broke the silence. His heart raced, a flicker of anxiety igniting in his gut. Who could it be? The shadows lengthened outside, and Samuel's mind couldn't help but wander to the people Marcus had mentioned, the dangerous individuals lurking in the background of his son's life. "Samuel, it's me." The voice was unmistakable, bright and filled with a forced cheer. It was Marcus calling from the other side of the door. Samuel hesitated for a moment, then opened it, steeling himself for the confrontation that awaited. Marcus stood there, his expression a mixture of defiance and uncertainty, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn jeans. The light from the kitchen spilled over him, casting a warm glow that momentarily softened the lines of worry etched across his youthful face. "Hey," Marcus said, his voice low, almost shy. "I was thinking maybe we could talk?" "Yeah, come in," Samuel replied, stepping aside to let him enter. He watched as Marcus crossed the threshold, the tension between them palpable. The door creaked shut behind him, sealing them into the intimate space of their home, where years of shared memories lingered like ghosts. They sat at the table, the food steaming between them, a silent invitation to bridge the chasm that had opened up just hours before. Samuel pushed a plate toward Marcus, who stared at it as if it were a foreign object. The moment hung heavy in the air, and Samuel could see the conflict swirling in his son's eyes. "Listen," Samuel began, his voice steady yet gentle. "I know things have been tough and I don't want to fight. I just want to help you." Marcus looked up, his brow furrowing. "Help? By paying off my debts? You think that's all it's gonna take?" His voice rose, laced with frustration. "Those guys don't care about money. They want blood. They don't just walk away because someone throws cash at them." Samuel's heart sank at the raw fear beneath Marcus's bravado. "Marcus, please. I'm not pretending this is easy, but we can figure this out together. You need to talk to someone. Like a therapist?" Marcus scoffed, shaking his head. "You think I'm some kind of basket case?" "No," Samuel interjected, his patience waning. "I'm saying you need support. I can't just watch you spiral like this." A silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. Marcus picked at the food on his plate, pushing the vegetables around with his fork, his expression unreadable. Samuel could see the struggle in his son's face, the conflict between wanting help and the fear of admitting he needed it. Finally, Marcus looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You don't understand, Dad. I messed up and it's all my fault. I can't fix this. I don't know how." Samuel's heart ached at the sight of his son's vulnerability. He reached across the table, placing his hand over Marcus's. "You're not alone in this. You don't have to carry it all by yourself. I'm here." For a moment, Marcus hesitated, his eyes darting between Samuel's face and their joined hands. Slowly, he nodded, the tension in his shoulders beginning to ease as he took a deep breath. Okay, I'll talk to someone. But you have to promise me that you won't just bail me out again. I need to learn how to deal with my own messes." Samuel felt a surge of relief wash over him, though a small part of him still worried about the promise he had made. "I promise, but we're going to do this together. We'll find someone you can trust." As they resumed eating in a more comfortable silence, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind hues of violet and deep blue. The world outside seemed to fade, and in that moment, they were just a father and son, sharing a meal and trying to navigate the storm that raged around them. After dinner, the dishes were cleared away, and Samuel found himself staring out the window, lost in thought. The stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, each one a reminder of the dreams he once held dear, dreams that now felt so distant. He could only hope that the same sky would guide Marcus toward a better path. "Dad!" Marcus's voice cut through his reverie, drawing Samuel's attention. "Can we talk about what happens next?" "Sure," Samuel replied, turning to face him. "What's on your mind?" "I need to go back to those guys," Marcus said hesitantly, the bravado slipping away as he spoke. "I have to face them. I can't just hide forever." Samuel's heart raced at the thought. "Are you sure that's a good idea? We can find another way."
No, Dad.
Marcus's voice was firm now, and Samuel could see the resolve in his eyes. "I can't let them think I'm weak. I need to take responsibility for what I did." A wave of pride mixed with fear washed over Samuel. He wanted to protect Marcus, but he also knew that his son was growing up, learning to navigate the complexities of life. "Okay, but promise me you'll be careful, and that you'll keep me in the loop." Marcus nodded, the tension easing from his shoulders. "I promise." As the night deepened, Samuel felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where Marcus would learn to rise from the ashes of his mistakes. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, armed with the strength of their bond. But even as Samuel held on to that hope, a nagging worry settled in the back of his mind. The shadows of Marcus's past loomed large, and the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that they were still standing at the precipice of something much darker, and he wasn't sure if they would emerge unscathed. As the stars twinkled above, Samuel clung to the belief that love could light their way, even in the darkest of times. And with that thought, he took a deep breath, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the days to come. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the modest home. Inside, the faint aroma of simmering collard greens mingled with the rich scent of cornbread, filling the air with a comforting warmth. Samuel stood by the stove, stirring the pot absent-mindedly, his thoughts swirling like the steam rising from the bubbling broth. He had made a promise to Marcus, one that felt heavier than any weight he had borne before. "Dad!" Marcus's voice cut through the silence, a mix of hesitation and determination. Samuel turned, wiping his hands on a dish towel and leaning against the counter.
"Yeah, son."
Marcus shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his brow furrowed. "I was thinking about what we talked about earlier. I want to face them, my creditors." A knot tightened in Samuel's stomach. "You sure that's the best idea?" He tried to keep his voice steady, but the concern seeped through. "You know they're not exactly the understanding type." "I know," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't keep running. I can't keep hiding. It's not just about me anymore. I owe you, Dad. You've done enough." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Samuel studied his son, the way the fading light caught the sharp angles of his face, the shadows deepening around his eyes. This was not the boy he had raised. This was a man, one burdened by choices that had spiraled out of control. Samuel felt a pang of pride mixed with fear, a bittersweet cocktail that left a sour aftertaste. "All right," he finally said, his voice low but firm. "But you need to be careful. We'll come up with a plan. You can't just walk in there unprepared." Marcus nodded, a flicker of relief dancing across his features. "Thanks, Dad. I really mean it." He stepped forward as if to embrace Samuel, but then hesitated, the moment stretching out awkwardly. Instead, they settled for a brief clap on the shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie tinged with uncertainty. As they sat down to eat, the flickering candlelight cast a warm glow over their modest kitchen table, the flickering shadows dancing like memories long buried. Samuel watched as Marcus took a bite of cornbread, the way he savored it, as if it were a reminder of simpler times. The meal was more than just food. It was a thread that connected them, a lifeline in turbulent waters. "Do you remember when you used to help me cook?" Samuel asked, trying to steer the conversation toward safer shores. "You were just a little guy, standing on a stool next to me, stirring the pot." Marcus chuckled, a genuine laugh that felt like a breath of fresh air. "Yeah, and I always ended up with more flour on my face than in the bowl." Samuel smiled, picturing the scene vividly, the kitchen filled with laughter and the chaos of a child trying to mimic his father. Those were the days when life felt less complicated, when their biggest worries revolved around spilled milk and burnt toast. As the meal continued, Samuel noticed the tension in Marcus's shoulders slowly easing, if only for a moment. They shared stories, reminiscing about old family outings and the mischief they had gotten into together. But as the last remnants of cornbread disappeared, the conversation inevitably turned back to the looming confrontation. "Do you think they'll listen?" Marcus asked, the bravado slipping from his voice. "Or will they just see me as a target?" Samuel took a deep breath, steeling himself. "People like that don't listen to reason, son. They see what they want to see." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But you have something they don't expect. You have the truth on your side. You're not just a kid in over his head anymore. You're taking responsibility." Marcus nodded, but the worry remained etched on his face. "I just wish it didn't have to come to this. I wish I could go back and change my choices." Samuel's heart ached for his son, for the pain etched into those words. "We all wish we could change the past, Marcus. But all you can do is move forward. Make better choices. Learn from this." The kitchen fell silent, the weight of Samuel's words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a vibrant contrast to the somber mood inside. As they cleared the table, a knock at the door interrupted their quiet. Samuel exchanged a glance with Marcus, a flicker of apprehension passing between them. "Who could that be?" he murmured, wiping his hands on his apron. Marcus shrugged, his eyes darting toward the door. "Maybe it's the neighbors?" Samuel walked to the door, his heart beating faster with each step. He pulled it open, revealing a figure that sent a chill down his spine. It was Marcus's friend, Jake, a wiry young man with a reputation for being reckless. He stood there, hands shoved deep into his pockets, looking far too casual for the tension that hung around him. "Hey, man," Jake said, his voice light but his eyes scanning the room, taking in the atmosphere. "I heard you were back in town. Thought I'd check in on you. What do you want?" Marcus snapped, his voice a mix of irritation and concern. Jake shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "Just wanted to see how you're holding up. Heard you got in over your head. Thought you might need some help." Samuel felt a protective instinct surge within him. "We don't need any help from you, Jake. You're not exactly a good influence." Jake's brow furrowed, and he lifted his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, chill out, old man. I'm just offering. No need to bite my head off." He turned to Marcus, his tone shifting. "Look, I know things are tough right now, but we could work something out. You know I've got some connections." "No," Marcus said firmly, his voice steady. "I'm not going down that road again. I have to face this myself." Jake's expression soured, and a tension crackled in the air. "Suit yourself. Just remember I offered." With a dismissive wave, he turned and sauntered away, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. As the door closed, Samuel turned to Marcus, his heart pounding. "You can't be considering him, can you? He's trouble, Marcus. You know that." "I know," Marcus replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "But he's right about one thing. I need help. I can't do this alone." "Not that kind of help," Samuel said, his voice rising slightly. You need to stay away from people like him. He'll drag you back into that mess, and you'll never get out. Marcus clenched his fists, the tension in the room palpable. I'm trying to find my way out, Dad. I just don't know how to do it without some kind of support. Samuel felt the ground shift beneath him. His heart sank as he watched his son struggle. You have me. You have this family, he said, gesturing to the worn walls that held their memories. You don't need him. I don't want to rely on you anymore, Dad. Marcus shouted, the pain spilling over. I want to be my own person. I want to fix my mistakes. The words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Samuel's chest tightened as he processed the truth behind them. This wasn't just about money or debts. It was about Marcus's struggle for independence, a fight against the shadow of his past that loomed large. Then let's fix them together, Samuel said softly, his voice trembling with emotion. You don't have to do this alone. I'll help you, but you have to promise me you won't go down that road again. Not with people like Jake. Marcus looked at his father, the fight slowly draining from his posture. I promise, Dad, he said, a tremor in his voice. I just want to make it right. Samuel stepped closer, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder, grounding him in the moment. We'll figure it out. Together. As they stood there, wrapped in their shared resolve, the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, leaving the room cloaked in darkness. But Samuel felt a flicker of hope ignite within him, a small but steady flame that whispered of redemption and possibility. It would be a long road ahead, but for the first time in a while, he believed they could navigate the shadows together. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the modest living room, where Samuel sat in his favorite worn armchair, a faded relic whose fabric bore the imprint of countless hours spent pondering life's intricacies. The room still held the faint aroma of the collard greens he'd simmered that evening, mingling with the lingering scent of fried chicken and biscuits that had been a rare treat. Samuel's gaze drifted to the photograph on the wall, a snapshot of him and a younger Marcus, arms slung around each other, true smiles captured in the soft light of a summer day. But now the photograph felt like a ghost, a reminder of the innocence that had slipped through their fingers. As he stared at it, the weight of an unsteady future pressed down on him like the humidity of a summer storm. Marcus had retreated to his room after dinner, the sound of his footsteps heavy against the wooden floorboards. Samuel could hear him pacing, the creak of the floor echoing the turmoil that had been brewing inside him. Was it guilt, fear, or a mixture of both? Samuel's heart ached for his son, a young man caught in a web of his own making, desperately trying to claw his way out while simultaneously battling the demons that whispered in his ear. Dad! Marcus's voice broke the silence, tentative yet edged with urgency. Samuel straightened in his chair, torn between wanting to comfort him and the instinct to maintain some distance, to let Marcus grapple with his own choices. Yeah, buddy? Can we talk? The door creaked open, and Marcus stepped into the dim light, his expression a tumultuous blend of vulnerability and defiance. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed tightly over his chest, as if warding off an invisible threat. Sure. Samuel gestured to the empty space beside him, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus shuffled over and sank into the chair opposite his father. I've been thinking, Marcus began, his fingers fidgeting with the hem of his shirt, about what you said earlier about taking responsibility. Samuel nodded, his heart pounding with the weight of what was to come. And I want to do it. I want to take charge of my life, Marcus said, his voice steadying. But I can't do it alone. There it was, the unspoken plea, a mixture of pride and desperation. Samuel's chest tightened, knowing this moment could either fracture their relationship further or begin to heal the wounds that had festered for too long. I'm here for you, Samuel replied, his voice low and reassuring. But you have to commit to it, son. No more running. No more bad decisions. I know, Marcus said, his eyes searching Samuel's face for something. Approval, perhaps, or forgiveness. I think I might have a plan for dealing with my creditors. I just need to figure out how to approach them. It's risky, but I can't hide anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke, and Samuel's stomach churned at the thought of Marcus confronting the very people who had put him in this precarious position. What kind of plan? I thought if I go to them, explain my situation, maybe they'll be willing to negotiate. I'll offer to pay back what I can, even if it's not the full amount. Samuel felt a swell of pride mixed with dread. That's brave, he said, though the word tasted bitter on his tongue. But you need to be careful. You don't know what they're like. I know, Marcus replied, his voice laced with an edge of defiance. But I can't keep running. I have to face this. As they locked eyes, Samuel saw a flicker of the boy he had once known, the boy who had laughed too loudly and dreamed too big. He reached out, placing a hand on Marcus's knee, feeling the tension radiate beneath the fabric of his jeans. Just promise me you won't do anything reckless. We'll figure this out together. Marcus nodded, his jaw set with determination. I promise. The conversation shifted, lingering on plans and potential outcomes. But Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the calm before a storm. The air crackled with unresolved tension, and as the night deepened, so did Samuel's unease. Hours later, as Samuel lay in bed, the weight of the day pressed heavily on his chest. He stared up at the ceiling, listening to the soft rhythm of Marcus's breathing from the next room. Sleep eluded him, thoughts spiraling into a vortex of worry and regret. What if Marcus's plan backfired? What if the creditors were as dangerous as the rumors suggested? Samuel turned onto his side, the worn mattress creaking beneath him, and reached for the small lamp on the nightstand, its warm glow casting flickering shadows against the walls. He picked up the photograph of him and Marcus, tracing the edges with his fingers. That day in the park felt like a lifetime ago, a time when laughter came easily and the world seemed full of promise. Now, the weight of life's choices hung over them like a shroud, thick and suffocating. The next morning, Samuel awoke to the distant sound of the front door creaking open. He blinked against the sunlight streaming through the window, heart racing as he recognized the sense of urgency in the footsteps. Marcus? He called, pushing himself off the bed, the wooden floor cold against his bare feet. He hurried down the hallway, the familiar smell of coffee wafting through the air, mingling with the scent of something else, an undercurrent of anxiety. In the kitchen, Marcus stood at the counter, his back to Samuel, the tension in his shoulders unmistakable. What's going on? Samuel asked, concern flooding his voice as he took in the way Marcus fidgeted, his hands gripping the edge of the counter. I need to leave, Marcus replied, his voice taut. Leave? Where are you going? Marcus turned, his expression a mixture of defiance and fear, eyes darting to the window. I'm meeting someone. It's about the debts. Samuel's heart sank. Marcus, you're not thinking straight. You said you'd face this head-on, not run off to meet whoever this is. It's not like that, Marcus snapped, frustration boiling beneath the surface. I need to take control. I can't sit around waiting for them to come after me. Control? By putting yourself in danger, Samuel countered, the words escaping his mouth before he could stop them. You don't know what they're capable of. I have to try, Marcus shouted, his voice echoing against the walls, thick with emotion. I can't keep living like this, Dad. I want to fix this. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken fears. Samuel could see the desperation etched across Marcus's face, a reflection of the turmoil that had been building for far too long. Just promise me you'll be careful, Samuel said, his voice softening, realizing that he was losing the battle for his son's safety. I will, Marcus replied, though the uncertainty in his eyes told a different story. As Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, Samuel's heart raced. He felt the walls closing in, the weight of his decision to help Marcus crashing down around him. "Wait!" he called out, desperation creeping into his tone. "Let me come with you." Marcus paused, glancing back, surprise flickering across his face. "You can't. This is something I have to do alone." "Marcus, please." The plea hung in the air, filled with the echoes of 1,000 unfulfilled promises. "Trust me," he said, and with that he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him. Samuel stood there, breathless, the silence of the empty house enveloping him like a heavy blanket. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the golden light, but all he could feel was the chilling fear of loss creeping into every corner of his heart. He had paid off Marcus's debts, believing that it would give them a chance to rebuild, but now it felt like he had unwittingly set his son on a path that could lead to danger. As he sank back into his chair, the photograph of happier times caught his eye once more. He reached for it, fingers trembling as he traced the lines of Marcus's youthful face. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty room, the weight of regret settling heavily in the pit of his stomach. The road ahead felt dark and uncertain, and Samuel knew that the real battle had only just begun. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across the modest living room. Samuel leaned against the worn wooden doorframe, fingers tracing the edge of a faded photograph pinned to the wall. A snapshot of happier times. A younger Marcus, beaming at a t-ball game, the sun glinting off his sweat-drenched forehead. The memory felt like a ghost, fluttering just out of reach, leaving Samuel with a hollow ache in his chest. He had spent the last hour pacing the small space, the familiar creak of the floorboards a reminder of the weight pressing down on him. The faint aroma of collard greens simmering in the kitchen mingled with the musty scent of old books stacked haphazardly on the shelf. Each tick of the clock echoed like a countdown, and with every sound, his heart raced a little faster. Marcus hadn't just left the house. He had ventured into the lion's den, and Samuel's mind spiraled with worst-case scenarios. What if the creditors didn't take his son's plea seriously? What if they resorted to threats or worse? Samuel swallowed hard, the thought igniting a fire of anger and helplessness within him. He pulled his phone from his pocket, glancing at the screen to see if Marcus had messaged him. Nothing. The silence felt deafening. It was hard to shake the feeling that Marcus's independence was a double-edged sword, one that could slice through the fragile bond they had built over the years. Samuel's mind drifted back to their earlier conversation. The way Marcus had clenched his fists, determination etched across his face as he insisted on handling things his way. "Dad, I can't keep running from this," Marcus had said, his voice tight with urgency. "I need to face them. If I don't, I'll never be free." Samuel had nodded, though the fear clutched at his insides like a vice. He wanted to believe in Marcus's resolve, but he couldn't shake the nagging doubt that lingered in the back of his mind. What did Marcus truly understand about the world he was stepping into? With a heavy sigh, Samuel walked to the kitchen, stirring the greens absent-mindedly. The steam rose in wisps, curling around him like a comforting embrace. He thought back to the nights they spent together, cooking meals just like this one, sharing laughter and stories. Those memories felt like fragile threads woven into the fabric of their lives, now fraying at the edges. Suddenly, a loud knock shattered his reverie. Samuel's heart skipped a beat as he wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened the door. Standing before him was Marcus, breathless and wide-eyed, his hair disheveled and cheeks flushed. "Dad," he gasped, stepping inside. "You won't believe what just happened." Samuel's heart raced. "Are you okay?" He scanned Marcus's face for any sign of injury, any hint of trouble lurking just beneath the surface. "Yeah, I'm fine," Marcus replied, though the way he shifted on his feet suggested otherwise. He ran a hand through his hair, visibly struggling to find the words. I talked to them. I really did. Samuel felt a mix of relief and dread wash over him. And Marcus took a deep breath, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for answers among the familiar surroundings. They didn't take me seriously at first. They wanted the full amount. But what? Samuel pressed, eager for clarity. Marcus hesitated, biting his lip. I managed to negotiate a bit. They agreed to a payment plan, but there's a catch. Samuel felt his stomach tighten. What kind of catch? They want me to bring them some money by the end of the week. If I don't, they'll come after me. Marcus's voice trembled slightly, and Samuel could see the fear lurking just beneath the bravado. Marcus, this isn't just a game, Samuel said, his voice low and steady. You're dealing with dangerous people. You can't just waltz in there and think you can talk your way out of it. I know, Dad, Marcus snapped, frustration flaring in his eyes. But I had to do something. I can't keep hiding. I can't keep running to you for everything. His words hung in the air, heavy and charged. Samuel's heart sank. He had sacrificed so much to help Marcus, but the distance between them felt insurmountable. I'm not trying to take control of your life, son. I just want you to be safe. I can handle this, okay? Marcus shot back, his voice rising. I'm not a kid anymore. You can't keep treating me like one. The words stung, a sharp reminder of the shifting dynamics in their relationship. Samuel took a step back, the air thick with tension. I just want to protect you, he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't need protection. Marcus's hands balled into fists at his sides, his frustration boiling over. I need you to trust me. I need you to believe that I can do this. Samuel's chest tightened. He saw the fire in Marcus's eyes, the same fire that had once ignited dreams and passions. But now it felt like a raging inferno, threatening to consume everything in its path. And what if you can't? He asked, the desperation creeping into his tone. What if they don't give you any more chances? I'll figure it out, Marcus shouted, the words bursting forth like a dam breaking. I've been trying to figure it out for so long. Dad, you paid off my debts, but that doesn't change what I've done. It doesn't change who I am. The silence that followed was deafening. Samuel stood frozen, grappling with the weight of his son's admission. The flickering light overhead cast shadows on the walls, mirroring the uncertainty that loomed between them. Maybe you should have let me face the consequences, Marcus finally said, his voice quieter now, tinged with regret. Maybe I would have learned something. Samuel felt a wave of sorrow wash over him. I just wanted to help you, Marcus. I thought I was doing the right thing. Marcus turned away, his shoulders tense. The right thing? Or the easy thing? You don't know what it's like to feel trapped, to feel like you owe everyone something and can't escape. You've always had a safety net. I don't. The words cut deep, and Samuel's heart ached for the boy he had once held close. He stepped forward, reaching out as if to bridge the gap between them. You're right, I don't know what it's like, but I know what it means to love someone enough to want to protect them, even when it feels impossible. Marcus's eyes met his, and for a moment, the anger dissolved, replaced by something softer, vulnerability. I don't want you to carry my burdens anymore, he admitted, his voice trembling. But I don't know how to stop. Samuel's heart cracked open a little more. You don't have to do this alone. We can figure it out together. But you have to let me in. Marcus looked away, his gaze falling to the floor. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken fears and hopes. Finally, he nodded slowly, as if conceding to a truth he had been avoiding. Okay, he said quietly, but I need to take the first step myself. Samuel felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. I can support you, but you need to be honest with me about what's going on. No more secrets. Okay? Okay, Marcus replied, his voice barely above a whisper. As they stood there, The sun finally set, casting the room into shadows but also a soft glow from the last remnants of daylight filtering through the window. Samuel felt a shift in the air, a tentative truce forming between them. They were both scared, both uncertain of the future, but for the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of understanding, an acknowledgement of the struggles they faced together. "Let's eat," Samuel said, gesturing toward the steaming pot on the stove, the smell of collard greens wafting through the air. "We can talk more over dinner." Marcus nodded, a hint of a smile breaking through the heaviness. "Yeah, I could use some food." As they settled at the small kitchen table, Samuel felt a sense of calm begin to settle in. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, a chance for them to rebuild, to form a bond forged through honesty and shared burdens. The road ahead would be difficult, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could navigate it together. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting an orange glow through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the air. Samuel stood at the counter, his hands trembling slightly as he chopped onions, the sharp scent mingling with the lingering aroma of collard greens simmering on the stove. He had turned to cooking as a distraction, the rhythmic sound of the knife meeting would offering a semblance of control in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. Marcus had left only an hour ago, his footsteps echoing down the worn wooden floorboards, each step sounding like a decision Samuel feared would lead him further from safety. He could still picture the determination in his son's eyes, a mixture of resolve and desperation that twisted Samuel's gut. This was a turning point, he knew, but it felt more like a precipice. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of the impending confrontation that loomed over them. Samuel wiped his brow with the back of his hand, glancing at the photograph that hung on the wall. A picture of him, his late wife Mary, and a beaming Marcus as a child. The boy was clutching a baseball bat, a grin so wide it could light up the darkest days. That boy was still in there somewhere, buried beneath layers of pride and poor choices. Just then, the front door creaked open. Samuel's heart skipped. It was too soon for Marcus to be back, yet a part of him hoped he would return, seeking refuge from the storm he had chosen to face. Instead, it was Marcus's friend Jake, his presence filling the room with an uneasy energy. "Hey, Mr. Redding," Jake said, his voice casual, but there was a tension underlining his words. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips that didn't reach his eyes. "I was just checking in on Marcus. You know how he gets when he's all fired up." Samuel set the knife down, the clatter echoing in the silence that followed. "He's not here," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "What do you want, Jake?" "Oh, come on. Just wanted to see how you're doing, you know? Marcus said you helped him out. Pretty big of you." Jake's grin widened, revealing a row of slightly crooked teeth. Samuel felt a flare of anger rise within him. "Helped him out? You mean I paid off his debts? That's no small thing when it comes to people like you." He fought against the urge to let his frustration spill over. He needed to maintain control if only for a moment longer. Jake stepped further into the kitchen, the smell of collard greens wafting towards him. "Yeah, well, that's not going to solve everything, is it? You think they'll just let him off easy? They're not just going to forget about the money." He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You know, I've got a few connections. If Marcus really wants to face them, I could help him out. Make it a little easier on him." Samuel's stomach twisted. "By what? Threatening them? You think that's the answer? You're just going to drag him deeper into this mess." He fought to keep his voice from rising, but the frustration clawed at him. Jake shrugged, unfazed. "Look, I'm just saying sometimes you've got to play hardball. It's either that or he keeps running. And we both know that doesn't end well." The kitchen felt smaller, the walls closing in on him as Samuel processed Jake's words. His son was not a child anymore, but he was still his boy, and the thought of him facing off against people like Marcus's creditors sent a chill down his spine. I don't want him involved with you or your friends, Jake. Not now, not ever, Samuel asserted, his voice firm. Jake's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. You don't get it, do you? He's not going to listen to you forever. He's got to learn to stand up for himself, and I'm just trying to help him do that. Help him? Samuel's voice cracked, the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. You're not helping him. You're pushing him further into danger, and he doesn't even see it. Jake held Samuel's gaze, a moment of silence hanging between them, thick with unspoken truths. Finally, he pushed off the doorframe, taking a step back. Fine, just thought I'd offer. But don't say I didn't warn you when everything goes south. With that, he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Samuel leaned against the counter, the cool granite grounding him as he tried to catch his breath. Jake's words echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the choices that lay ahead for Marcus. He couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness that enveloped him. What if Marcus took Jake's advice? What if he really believed he could confront his creditors without getting hurt? As darkness settled over the neighborhood, Samuel stirred the pot of collard greens, the steam rising and swirling like the chaos in his thoughts. He took a deep breath, letting the familiar smell of home fill his lungs, but it did little to ease his mind. Hours passed, and the kitchen grew dimmer, lit only by the soft glow of a single bulb. Samuel had set the table for two, the plates and silverware neatly arranged, but the silence in the house felt suffocating. He tried to convince himself that Marcus would return soon, that they could talk things through. But as the minutes turned into hours, doubt began to gnaw at him. Finally, just as the clock struck 10, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps shuffling up the steps. The door creaked open, and Marcus stepped inside, his face shadowed in the dim light. Samuel could see the tension etched into his son's features, the flicker of anxiety in his eyes. "Hey," Marcus said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Hey," Samuel replied, trying to sound nonchalant as he wiped his hands on a dish towel, unsure of how to approach the moment. "Did you eat?" Marcus asked, his gaze drifting to the table, where the plates still sat untouched. "Not yet," Samuel said, unable to hide the disappointment in his tone. "I thought we could eat together." "Yeah, sorry. I was out talking to Jake," Marcus admitted, his shoulders slumping as he stepped further into the kitchen. Samuel felt the air grow heavy between them. "What did he say?" Marcus looked away, his jaw tightening. "Just stuff about the creditors. He thinks I should handle it a certain way." "Handle it how?" Samuel pressed, the unease turning into urgency. "You know you can't just confront them without a plan." "I know that, Dad," Marcus snapped, frustration spilling over. "But Jake thinks I can negotiate. I can't keep running forever. I need to take control." Samuel felt a wave of anger rise within him, but he fought to keep his voice steady. "Control? You think facing them without any backup is control? You're putting yourself in danger, and for what? A chance to prove a point." "It's not just about proving a point," Marcus shouted, his voice echoing in the small kitchen. "It's about taking responsibility, about growing up. I can't keep relying on you to fix everything." Samuel's heart sank at the truth of those words. "I'm not trying to fix everything, son. I just want you to be safe." "I can take care of myself," Marcus insisted, his voice rising again, filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "Can you?" Samuel challenged, stepping closer, the distance between them shrinking. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're just one bad decision away from losing everything." The tension in the room thickened, a palpable wall between father and son. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustration spilling from his lips. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not a kid anymore. I'm trying to be my own person, and you keep treating me like I'm just going to mess everything up." Samuel felt the sting of his son's words, the truth in them cutting deep. I want you to succeed, Marcus. I want you to be better than I ever was. But you can't do it alone. You need help, and you need to be wise about your choices. Silence hung heavy in the air, both men breathing hard, their emotions swirling like a storm. Finally, Marcus turned away, gaze fixed on the window where the last traces of light were fading. "I've got to go," he muttered, the finality of his words slicing through the tension. "Go where?" Samuel asked, a twinge of panic threading through his voice. "Just out. I need to think." Before Samuel could protest, Marcus slipped out the door, leaving it swinging slightly behind him. Samuel stood in the kitchen, the warmth of the collard greens forgotten, the table set for two now feeling like a reminder of everything that felt wrong. He sank down onto a chair, head in his hands, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He felt lost, a father unable to guide his son through the tempest of his choices, and the fear of what might come next settled heavily in his heart. As the night deepened around him, Samuel wondered if there was any way to bridge the chasm that had formed between them, or if Marcus was truly determined to walk a path that could lead him to ruin. The only thing he could do now was wait, hope, and pray that the morning would bring clarity, and perhaps a chance for redemption. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the modest living room. Samuel sat in his worn armchair, its fabric faded from years of use, clutching the edges of the upholstery as if it could somehow anchor him to reality. His heart raced, a steady thrum of worry echoing in his chest. He had spent the last few hours replaying the events of the day in his mind, the weight of what had transpired settling heavily on his shoulders. Marcus had stormed out, his words ringing in Samuel's ears. "You don't understand. I can handle this." The defiance in his son's voice had cut deeper than any knife, leaving Samuel feeling helpless. He had offered to pay off Marcus's debts out of love, yet it seemed to have ignited a fire of resentment within him. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Samuel glanced at the clock on the wall. It was late, too late for casual visitors. He rose slowly, the wooden floor creaking beneath his weight, and opened the door. Standing on the porch was a figure he didn't expect to see. Marcus, looking more disheveled than usual. His hair was tousled, and his eyes were wide, an unsettling mix of fear and frustration swirling behind them. Samuel's heart sank. "Dad, we need to talk," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Samuel nodded, stepping aside to let him in. The faint aroma of collard greens simmered in the kitchen, a remnant of the meal he had prepared earlier, but the warmth of the house felt distant, overshadowed by the tension in the air. Marcus paced the room, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets. "I messed up, Dad," he admitted, finally stopping to face his father. "I thought I could handle it, but it's worse than I thought." "What do you mean?" Samuel asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing within him. "What happened?" "I went to see Jake," Marcus began, his gaze dropping to the floor. "He said he had a plan to get the money back. I thought—" His voice trailed off, and Samuel watched as his son wrestled with the gravity of his choices. "Thought what?" Samuel pressed gently, trying to keep the frustration at bay. "I thought I could make a deal. Get them off my back," Marcus confessed, running a hand through his hair. "But they weren't interested in deals. They want their money, and they want it now." Samuel's pulse quickened. The last thing he wanted was for Marcus to get involved with people like Jake again. "What did they say?" "They said if I don't pay up by tomorrow, they'll come for me," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "I didn't know what to do, Dad. I didn't want to come back here and admit I was wrong." A silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken fears. Samuel's heart ached for his son, who had always been so proud, so determined to forge his own path. "Marcus, you can't face them alone," he said softly. "Let me help you." Marcus shook his head vehemently. "No, I can't keep dragging you into my mess. I need to take care of this myself. Taking care of it yourself is what got you here in the first place. Samuel shot back, the words escaping before he could rein them in. He felt the anger rise, fueled by worry and frustration. You need to understand that you're not alone in this. You don't have to bear this burden by yourself. I can't just sit back and let you handle everything. I'm not a kid anymore. Marcus's voice rose, and he clenched his fists at his sides. Then act like an adult, Samuel replied, his own voice rising to match his son's intensity. You can't just run headfirst into danger without a plan. You're not thinking straight. The tension in the room crackled like static electricity, each word piercing the air between them. Marcus's eyes flashed with defiance, but beneath that bravado, Samuel could see the flicker of vulnerability. Maybe I don't know what to do, Marcus admitted, his voice now barely a murmur. The fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a weary resignation. Samuel took a deep breath, the anger ebbing away as concern washed over him. He stepped closer, searching his son's face for the boy he once knew, the boy who would rush into his arms after a hard day. Then let's figure this out together, he said gently. I can talk to the creditors, find a way to buy you some time. No, Marcus shouted, throwing his hands up in frustration. I don't want you to get involved with them. You don't know what they're capable of. Samuel flinched at the certainty in Marcus's voice, the unbidden memories of his own past flickering like a film reel in his mind. He had faced tough situations in his youth, but they were nothing compared to the world Marcus had stepped into. Then what do you want me to do? Samuel asked, his voice softer, almost pleading. Tell me how I can help. Marcus turned away, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world rested on them. I don't know, Dad. I just don't know. Samuel felt a pang of sorrow as he watched his son struggle with his emotions. He longed to reach out, to comfort him, but he knew that this was a moment Marcus needed to confront on his own. Look, Samuel said, trying to keep his tone calm. I'll give you some space to think, but I want you to remember, I'm here for you, no matter what. Marcus nodded, the defiance fading from his expression. He looked smaller somehow, as if the fight had left him. Yeah, okay. Samuel watched as Marcus moved to the kitchen, the faint sound of his footsteps echoing in the silence. He knew that beneath the bravado lay a young man grappling with consequences far beyond his years. The tension in the air remained thick as Samuel returned to his chair, the faint glow of the setting sun filtering through the living room window. He felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him, a reminder that tomorrow could bring more than just the dawn. It could bring danger to his doorstep. As night fell, Samuel sat in the dim light, lost in thought. The shadows lengthened around him, and he couldn't shake the sense of dread creeping in. He'd worked so hard to create a safe haven for Marcus, a sanctuary where they could navigate the storms of life together. But now, it felt as if that sanctuary was crumbling, threatened by the very choices that had once seemed so trivial. He glanced at the photograph on the wall, a snapshot of better days when laughter filled the house and dreams felt achievable. It was a reminder of the bond they shared, a bond that was now entangled in confusion and fear. Please, Marcus, Samuel whispered to the darkened room. Find a way through this. But he understood the harsh reality. Tomorrow would not just be another day. It would be a test of their resolve, a moment that could redefine their relationship forever. Samuel leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes, praying for strength as he prepared to face whatever challenges awaited them at dawn. The dim light of the setting sun cast long shadows in Samuel's modest home, illuminating the worn wooden floorboards that creaked softly underfoot. He stood in the kitchen, the rich aroma of simmering collard greens wafting from the pot on the stove, mingling with the faint scent of cornbread baking in the oven. But the comforting smells that usually brought him solace felt muted. Anxiety clung to him like a thick fog. Samuel stirred the greens absent-mindedly, his thoughts spiraling back to Marcus. The memory of their last confrontation played on a loop in his mind, the tension in Marcus's voice, the hurt in his eyes when Samuel had suggested he reconsider his choices. Even now, just hours later, the weight of the argument felt as heavy as the skillet he lifted onto the counter. He sighed, wiping his brow with a dish towel, and glanced at the clock. It was nearly 7. Marcus had promised he would return soon, though Samuel couldn't shake the worry gnawing at his insides. His son had stormed out, a defiance in his step that Samuel had seen before, an all too familiar dance of pride and desperation. "I can handle this, Dad," Marcus had insisted, but Samuel knew better. He had seen the way Marcus's shoulders slumped when he thought no one was watching, the way his hands trembled slightly when he was pushed too far. As if on cue, the front door creaked open, and Samuel's heart raced. He turned, hoping to see Marcus's familiar figure, but instead, it was Jake who swaggered in, a wide grin plastered across his face. Samuel's heart sank. The boy had been nothing but trouble since the first time he'd knocked on their door, all charm and bravado with an underlying current of danger. "Hey, Mr. Hargrove," Jake called out, his voice too bright for Samuel's liking. "Is Marcus around?" "He's not back yet," Samuel replied tersely, crossing his arms over his chest. "What do you want with him?" Jake shrugged, the grin unwavering. "Just wanted to talk. You know how it is, friends looking out for each other. I was hoping we could work something out." Samuel's gaze narrowed. "Work something out? Is that what you call it? Last I checked, your idea of helping him nearly got him killed." Jake rolled his eyes, unabashed. "Come on, Mr. Hargrove. I'm just trying to show him a better way. He doesn't need to be stuck in that house of yours forever, does he? It's time for him to break free." "Break free," Samuel echoed, disbelief lacing his voice. "By throwing himself deeper into this mess? You're not helping him, Jake. You're dragging him down." "Yeah? And what's your plan then?" "Huh." Jake shot back, his tone sharper. "Keep him cooped up here until he's too old to make a move? You can't protect him from the world forever." At that, Samuel's fists clenched. "That's my job as his father, to protect him. Even if it means he doesn't like it. Protecting him or smothering him. Maybe he just needs a little push." Jake leaned against the doorframe, his casual posture a stark contrast to the tension thickening in the air. "You think he'll thank you for paying off his debts? He'll resent you for it." The words stung, and Samuel felt the familiar pang of regret creeping in. He had thought he was doing the right thing, thought he could save Marcus from the spiraling chaos of his choices. But what if Jake was right? What if Marcus only saw him as a crutch, a barrier to the life he wanted? Before Samuel could respond, Marcus stumbled through the door, his face flushed and his eyes wide, a mixture of anger and fear swirling within them. He seemed to take in the scene, the tension between Samuel and Jake, the simmering pot on the stove, and his expression hardened. "Jake, what are you doing here?" Marcus demanded, stepping further into the room, his voice low but charged. "Just checking in on you, man," Jake replied, a casualness that felt all wrong in the moment. "I was just talking to your dad about a plan we've got." "A plan?" Marcus's brow furrowed, suspicion creeping into his voice. "What kind of plan?" "Nothing too crazy," Jake said, waving a dismissive hand. "Just a way to handle your creditors without getting yourself killed. I told you, you can't keep running scared." "Running scared?" Marcus shot back, fists clenched at his sides. "I'm not running scared, Jake. I'm trying to figure this out without dragging my dad into it." Samuel felt the weight of the conversation shift, and he stepped forward, trying to interject. "Marcus, let's just talk about this calmly. You don't have to do anything rash." But Marcus brushed him off. "I can handle this, Dad. I don't need you to coddle me or bail me out. That's not how this works." "Then what do you want?" Samuel's voice broke slightly, the anguish rising within him. Do you want to keep digging yourself deeper? Do you think that's going to fix anything? Fixing things takes time, Marcus snapped, the hurt flashing in his eyes. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? You just want to keep me safe in your little bubble. Marcus, it's not a bubble. It's called responsibility. Samuel's voice echoed through the small kitchen, momentarily silencing the clash of emotions. Jake, sensing the rising storm, stepped back, a smirk on his face. I'll let you two hash it out. Just remember, Marcus, you've got options. Don't let fear keep you from making the right choice. With that, he slipped out of the house, leaving a charged silence in his wake. Marcus turned to Samuel, his expression a mix of defiance and vulnerability. You don't understand, he said, his voice trembling. I can't keep living like this. I need to take control of my life, and you're just in the way. Maybe I'm in the way because I care about you, Samuel replied, desperation creeping into his tone. I don't want to see you hurt. I don't want you to make a mistake you can't come back from. Marcus crossed his arms, a defensive gesture, and turned away. You think I'm not aware of the risks? You think I don't know what's at stake? I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I'm trying to figure out how to be a man. Samuel's heart ached at the words. It was true. Marcus was no longer the boy he had once held in his arms. He was a young man, struggling to find his way in a world that felt increasingly hostile. But the danger of his current path was undeniable. Being a man doesn't mean throwing caution to the wind, Samuel said softly, his voice breaking. It means making choices that lead to a better life. Not just for you, but for those who love you. Tears brimmed in Marcus's eyes, and for a moment, Samuel saw the boy he used to know. The one who would come running for a hug after a bad day. The one who believed in the goodness of the world. But that boy felt like a distant memory now, lost in the shadows of desperation and pride. I'm tired of feeling trapped, Marcus finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I just want to feel like I have some control. Samuel took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. You do have control, Marcus, but it starts with understanding the consequences of your actions. Let me help you. Let's work together to figure this out. I don't want your help, Marcus snapped, though the fire in his eyes flickered. I want to do this on my own. Doing it alone isn't always the answer, Samuel said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You don't have to face this alone. I'm here for you, no matter what. The air between them hung heavy with unspoken words, and Samuel saw the battle within Marcus. A struggle between pride and the need for support. He wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap between them, but the chasm felt insurmountable. I need to think, Marcus finally said, turning away as if to escape the weight of the moment. He headed toward the door, pausing for just a second before pushing it open. I'll be back later. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Samuel standing alone in the fading light. The warmth of the kitchen felt cold now, the simmering greens forgotten as he stared at the empty doorway. He had never wanted this for his son. A life tangled in debt, desperation, and dangerous friendships. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the room into shadow, Samuel realized that the fight for Marcus's future was far from over. The stakes were higher than ever, and he could only hope that his son would find his way back before it was too late. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in the modest living room where Samuel sat, the weight of the day heavy upon his shoulders. He had spent the better part of the afternoon pacing the worn wooden floorboards, his thoughts swirling like the dust motes dancing in the golden light. Marcus had stormed out that morning, his face a blend of anger and desperation, leaving Samuel with a restless heart and a sense of impending doom. The faint aroma of collard greens simmering on the stove filled the air, a comforting reminder of home, yet it felt hollow without Marcus's laughter or the clatter of dishes that usually accompanied family dinners. Instead, silence enveloped the room, broken only by the occasional sizzle from the pot. Samuel glanced at the clock, its ticking echoing in the stillness, each second a reminder of how fleeting time could be. Just as he turned to check on the greens, there was a knock at the door, sharp and insistent. It startled him, and he felt a rush of anxiety as he wiped his hands on a dish towel, the fabric damp with sweat. He hesitated for a moment, his heart thumping loudly in his chest. He knew that knock. It was all too familiar. When he opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. There stood Marcus, his eyes wide and frantic, a wild energy radiating from him like a storm about to break. The moment their gazes met, Samuel could see the turmoil beneath the surface. His son was unraveling, a tightly wound spring that was ready to snap. "Dad, I need to talk to you," Marcus said, his voice low and urgent, as if he feared being overheard. "Come in," Samuel replied, stepping aside to let him pass. The air felt thick with tension as Marcus entered, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders hunched. Samuel closed the door behind him, his mind racing with possibilities. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to keep his tone steady despite the unease gnawing at him. Marcus paced the small living room, his boots scuffing against the floor. I messed up more than I thought," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "The people I owe money to, they're not just going to let me walk away from this. I thought I could handle it, but now—" Samuel's heart sank as realization washed over him. "What do you mean? What did you do, Marcus?" "I tried to make a deal," he said, his voice rising with frustration. "I thought I could buy some time, but they don't want to wait. They want their money, and they're not giving me a choice." "Marcus, this isn't just a game," Samuel said, stepping closer, the anger boiling beneath his calm exterior. "These people—" "I know," Marcus snapped, turning to face his father, his expression a mix of defiance and fear. "But I thought if I could just buy a little time, maybe I could figure something out. I thought I could prove to you that I can handle my own life." "By putting yourself in danger?" Samuel's voice trembled with concern. "This isn't how you prove anything, son. You're just digging a deeper hole." For a moment, they stood there, tension crackling in the air like static. Samuel could feel the weight of Marcus's choices pressing down on both of them, suffocating. The kitchen, once a sanctuary filled with the smells of home-cooked meals, now felt like a cage. "I don't need your help," Marcus shot back, his pride flaring. "I don't need anyone's help." "Is that what you really believe?" Samuel asked softly, his heart aching for his son. The stubbornness that had once been endearing now felt like a barrier, isolating Marcus from the support he desperately needed. "Maybe I just don't want to be a burden," Marcus muttered, his bravado faltering for a moment. "I don't want you to see me like this, Dad." Samuel stepped closer, lowering his voice as he searched his son's eyes. "You're not a burden, Marcus. You're my son. I want to help you, but you have to let me in. We can figure this out together." For a fleeting second, Marcus's defenses wavered, the anger ebbing away to reveal a flicker of vulnerability. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by an unyielding wall. I can't risk dragging you down with me." "That's not how this works," Samuel insisted, frustration spilling into his tone. "You think I'm going to turn my back on you just because things got tough? That's not what family does." "Family?" Marcus scoffed, his eyes flashing. "You think family means bailing me out when I screw up? That's not how I want it. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. Samuel felt a lump form in his throat. "Standing on your own doesn't mean you have to do it alone. There's strength in asking for help. It doesn't make you weak." Marcus shook his head, his jaw clenched. "You don't get it. You think I can just walk away from this? I can't. I have to fight." "Fight? By what?" "Throwing yourself into the lion's den." Samuel's voice cracked under the weight of his concern. "You're not invincible, Marcus. You're risking everything, including your life." The silence that followed was thick, laden with unspoken words and heavy hearts. Samuel could see the conflict swirling within Marcus, his son caught between youthful pride and the harsh reality of his situation. Finally, Marcus dropped his gaze, staring at the floor as if it held the answers he sought. "I don't know what else to do, Dad," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The vulnerability in Marcus's tone pulled at Samuel's heart. He stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Then let's figure it out together. You don't have to go through this alone." Marcus looked up, the fight in him momentarily fading, replaced by a flicker of hope. "But what can we do? They don't care about stories or family. They just want their money. We'll find a way. We'll talk to someone who knows how to handle these things. Maybe even get legal advice," Samuel suggested, his mind racing with possibilities. "There has to be a way to negotiate or delay things. You might not be able to pay them now, but we can come up with a plan." For the first time, Marcus seemed to relax slightly, the tension in his shoulders easing. "You really think that could work?" he asked, a hint of uncertainty creeping into his voice. "I do," Samuel replied, the conviction in his heart pushing through the fear that had gripped him. "But you have to promise me to be honest with me from now on. No more hiding things. We face this together, no matter what." Marcus nodded slowly, the fight in him still simmering but tempered by a flicker of trust. "Okay, I'll try." Samuel felt a sense of relief wash over him, but the shadows of uncertainty still lingered. "Let's eat something first. We can plan after dinner." As they moved to the kitchen, the familiar smells wrapped around them, a reminder of the home they shared despite the storm swirling outside. The evening light filtered through the window, casting a warm glow that softened the harsh edges of their reality. While they prepared the meal together, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on a precipice, the uncertain future looming ahead. The weight of Marcus's choices still hung in the air, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. They might not have all the answers, but they had each other, and for Samuel, that was a start. As they sat down to eat, the conversation began to flow, tentative at first, like the first drops of rain after a long drought. And as they shared stories and laughter, Samuel held on to that hope tightly, knowing they would need it as they faced the challenges ahead.